Hi there, Sophie Glenn here, and today we're going to be talking about how to make an orthographic drawing of this shoe here. So for those of you in my classes, you're going to be working on a wire shoe project, and you need to make an orthographic drawing of that shoe in 1.5 scale. So I'll talk about what that means. So first things first, you're going to have to choose a shoe, right? So I have my dirty old Doc Martin here, that's probably older than some of you guys. And I chose it because it's got a nice structure to it, it's got enough character where I can recreate it, I think, pretty easily out of wire. And I can easily pull measurements off of it. With that said, you can use pretty much any shoe that you want. I'd probably advise against using a flip-flop or any kind of like really strappy sandal type thing, because it's going to be really difficult to get those features in the wire. So definitely try to go for something like a closed-toed shoe, a boot, a sneaker, or whatever. So again, just try to avoid any kind of flip-flops or strappy sandals or anything like that. So I chose my Doc Martin here. And some other tools you're going to need are some measuring implements. So I have a T-square right here. I also got one of these bad boys, right? Because I'm going to be doing mine on the chalkboard just so it's a little bit easier to see. I also just have a triangle here, right? And I also have just regular old tape measure too, and of course something to write with, because that's also helpful. Now, again, I'm going to be doing mine on the chalkboard, but when you are making your actual orthographic drawings, you're going to want to choose something with a little bit finer point than this pencil here. So like a lead pencil works, or a mechanical pencil rather, works really well, because the more accurate your drawing is and the smaller your lines are, the more accurate your shoe is going to be ultimately. Because essentially the orthographic drawing is acting as a template for the wire pieces. So you can actually use your drawing to shape the pieces how you need them to be and kind of go from there. All right, so what is an orthographic drawing? So an orthographic drawing is a series of drawings that are in a particular scale but aren't in perspective. So for example, when you're doing an orthographic drawing, you want to get the front or the side view here, then you often want to do kind of a front view, maybe even a top view like that, or a back view, bottom view, whatever. So depending on the drawing that you're making and sort of the multiple views that you need to have for this drawing, then you're going to want to do multiple views. But the thing is that you don't want them to be in perspective at all. So it's really just a method of getting accurate measurements from an object in and of itself. So furniture makers use them quite a lot when they're looking to recreate pieces from other people's designs. They'll often take orthographic drawings because they'll show the accurate measurements of the pieces you need to cut out. So essentially the same thing applies to this wire shoe. Okay, so this is a full-scale shoe, so I need to make it 1.5 scale, right? So what that means is whatever the length, height, width, I need to multiply those numbers by 1.5, okay? So to do that, depending on the shoe, you might be able to just take a tape measure, right? And either sort of draw a line one way or the other, or you can definitely do this and measure the height here. But say you have a shoe that's a little bit wonkier in shape, so the sole is maybe kind of bent up, or it's really old shoe, and you can't really get, like, sort of it's bent up like this or something like that, so it gets a little bit more difficult to make an accurate drawing out of it. What you can do instead is take something with two perpendicular sides, so they meet at 90 degrees. So I can take it from my highest point here, right? And then I could draw a little line here. And I could do the same thing back here. So I'm gonna exclude this tag for just a minute, but I'm gonna take it from the heel, or yeah, from the heel. And just right there. So now I have 2 points on my paper here where I can take my scaled drawing from. So we'll get a rough estimate. Okay, so it's at 11 inches. It's 11. So then I multiply that by 1.5, right? So that should get me 16 and a half. Okay? So the overall length of my shoe is going to be 16 and a half inches for the wire shoe, I mean, because it's in 1.5 scale. So I can go ahead and draw my line, my 16 and a half inch line. And I'll use this guy. So I'm using this one so I can also start to get right angle measurements. So I can measure the height of my shoe also. So right now I'm just giving myself a box to work with more or less. All right, so I'll go from here. And 0 here, and then I said 16 and a half, so right here. All right. Flip that around as best I can. I have a frame in my way, but that's all right. Oops. Yeah, this is not going to be totally accurate because I'm doing it on a chalkboard, but it will be easier to do on your piece of paper. All right, so there's my starting out box. Okay. So now I will take the height so I can create my box that way. So what I'll do is I will basically just measure this from eye level. So I'll actually get down here and then measure this from eye level. So it's about 8.5 inches. It's actually we'll say 8, it's actually 8 1/4, so it's 8 1/4, okay? So that's 8.25. And if you're a little bit unsure about how to read a ruler, again, that's totally okay, but I do have a video about that, so make sure to check that out if you need to. So 8 1/4 by 1.5. So another way to go about doing this, if you're dealing with fractional multiplication in this case, so I got 1 here, so it's 8.25, and then I'm adding another half of this onto there, so that'd be 4 1/8, so plus 4 1/8. And again, if you don't know the decimal places or sorry, the decimal measurements for fractions, so you can check out that measuring video too, and I go into that. So then I can add those two together, and it's 12 3/8. Okay. So 12 3/8. I'll use this one again. Might need to extend my line. Actually, no, it's okay. So 12 3/8, which is right here. So just one little mark right under 12 1/2. And you're going to kind of, it's not going to be perfect because again, I'm using chalk and a chalkboard, but it's just so you guys can see it a little bit easier. And I'll use this one. So I marked both points here, and then I'll just connect the dots, so to speak. All right. So this is the square I'm working with now. So now I have the overall measurements of what I'm going for. So with this too, this is really just to help you guys, well, this is just an exercise really to work with scale drawings. So if it's a little bit off in one way or the other, it's not a huge deal because this is sculpture, right? So we're not really dealing with too many harsh measurements here. But certainly with furniture making, you want to make sure to make all of your drawings accurately, or else it's going to skew everything out of proportion. So a little mistake in one spot is going to lead to a huge mistake later on down the line. As those of you who have done woodworking before know that. So, so just be aware of that when you're working. So this would be the side view here. So I'll go into that real quick. All right, so working from this side here. So now what I would do, I still have these measurements, right? So now I can actually give myself a couple of lines there, and I can give myself a front view. All right, so when you're still working with paper, or when you're working on paper, you can just extend all of these lines out. I actually just erase them up here, and then you can have, right, that could be a top view here, right? And then we'll just say for the purposes of this, so this is your front view here. So now I want to measure the widest part of my shoe here. So I'll take it from the bottom, which happens to be right here. So that's going to be the reference I use to, actually I'll just measure it from the bottom because that seems to be easiest. So yeah, it looks like it's right around here. So my highest point is right here. And then I'll use that. Just use a tape measure for this. This is 4 1/4 times 1.5. You can do this math in your head, you get bonus points. 4 1/4 times 1.5. So again, it's, well, if we add it, it's 4.25, right, plus another half. So that's 2 1/8. So that would be 6 3/8. Hopefully you can see that. Okay, so my measurement here will be 6 3/8. I'll just use this guy. So measuring from here, I'll just extend this line out. Oops. 6 3/8, right around here. Okay, and if you don't have one of these carpenter squares here, what you can do is take a triangle, right? So I can have this up here, and then I can give myself, and line this triangle up so I can give myself a nice, actually not too bad there. So I can give myself a nice straight line going down that way. So that's one way to work around not having certain tools, right? That's that. I'll do the same thing over here. I'll have to extend it up a little bit because my triangle's not quite tall enough. That's all right. Just kind of eyeball it. And since I already established my height, I could just extend this line out. And that would be my front view there, right? So now I have more or less all of my, not all of them, I didn't really figure out my top one here, but it's a little bit hard to reach and it's all the way up there. But I can at least get started with my side view and my front views, right? So now the artistic side comes into play. So now I can sort of figure out what this shoe needs to look like. And I can kind of start with just like a rough outline. So for my boot here, it seems about like 2/3 of it is the ankle and part of the foot, and then the toe is really that last third. So I can split this up into thirds. I can just kind of eyeball it. Then it comes up a little bit here. Right, and then so I can kind of do something like this. That's the foot there. Here's the toe. Right? So it kind of does something like that. And this is almost where the ankle starts. It's almost right around where the heel is. It's actually a little bit before it. So my heel's right here, so I'll just put that right around there. Something like that. Might be a little bit steeper. Again, I'm just kind of rough outlining this at the moment, but you can be a little bit more accurate with this, and I would prefer you guys to be a little bit more accurate with this. Little armholes, yada yada. And then this kind of comes down and out like that. Maybe it's more like here. This kind of comes out like this. Little tag. All right, so that's looking kind of close to what I need it to look like. And I can also pull measurements off of the shoe itself too. So I can actually measure, since I already have lines figured out. All right, I have my lines that I used earlier to figure out the length. So then I can kind of eyeball it from the top. So this is where the beginning of the ankle part comes. So it's right around here. So now I can measure that. So it's roughly 4 inches times 1.5, it's 6 inches. So let's see if I did that right. So it starts more right here. So that's kind of close. I was only an inch off. Not too bad. Actually comes more like this. And that comes right here. Right, so now I can actually pull measurements from the shoe itself too. But this is looking kind of close to what I need it to look like, right? And like I said, you can have a little bit of artistic liberties here. So it doesn't have to be an exact replica of the shoe. I mean, certainly if you want to do that, that's totally fine. But for our purposes, you can just kind of make it a little bit your own. And since this is like a really beat up looking shoe and it's seen some better days, you can accentuate that in the wire. So you can have sort of these like crumpled, wrinkled areas in your wire shoe. And yeah, you can even create laces out of wire, or you can use actual laces. It's totally up to you. So that's kind of the bare bones basics of how to make an orthographic drawing, at least for the purposes of sculpture. So hopefully that comes a little bit in handy for you. So yeah, orthographic drawing.